Hello and welcome to the Global Dialogue. I'm Shireen Bhan and we're back in conversation with Chuck Robbins of Cisco. Chuck, good to have you back in India. It's your first visit since the COVID-19 pandemic and you come bearing good news.
Well, it's great to be back, and it's incredible to feel the energy in India right now and the momentum that's here. We do come bearing good news. We actually have made the decision to build a full manufacturing node for Cisco, global node, that we will use both for building products for India, but we'll also be exporting out of India to the region, to Europe, etc. So we've been here to announce that this week. We're very excited about it. I think the time's right. Our team's excited. It's certainly, I think the supply chain ecosystem is creating a broad-based presence in India, and I think it's just a great thing for us to do.
You know, let's talk about this manufacturing aspiration, because in many ways this is the next phase of Cisco's journey here in India, a journey that began in 1995. I was there in Bangalore when you launched your R&D center here in India. How significantly are you going to be investing in setting up this manufacturing capability? I understand that this is going to be coming up in Chennai. Give me an execution roadmap, if you will.
Well, first of all, I think as I leave India this week, the one thing I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt is that for the next decade, this is the biggest growth opportunity that we have as a company. And so if you take that statement, then you would translate that to this would be one of the biggest investment areas that we'll have over the next decade. And I think this is just the very beginning. We're going to start with manufacturing a couple of our high volume products. We're going to start with one of our high volume switches that goes in the middle of data centers, as well as one of our core routing platforms that is a big product that a lot of the carriers use to build out backbones for 5G. And then once we get that up and running and get the kinks worked out, then we'll expand the product portfolio from there. But it's not limited to manufacturing. You know, between direct and indirect employees today, R&D, operations, etc., we're in the mid-30,000s here. We're investing in skills and capacity. We've trained over 1 million Indians with Network Academy. We've got a commitment for 500,000 cybersecurity specialists in the next 24 months. We talked this week with government officials about investing in R&D in emerging technology areas like 6G. And there's a lot of different areas that we're considering, and I think it's just going to be a natural place for us to invest over the next few years. You know,
let's pick up on that statement that you made about India being one of the sort of best performing markets for Cisco over the next decade, and that is going to fuel your aspirations and your investments here as well. The 5G opportunity, and we've now seen, you know, virtually pan-India rollout as far as the 5G coverage is concerned. What do you make of the way that that's panned out in India? What are the use cases that you're now considering, and what could it potentially mean for Cisco going forward?
Well, I think the speed at which 5G was deployed here was pretty incredible. And I think it is part of the overall digital strategy for the government, which is that digitization has to be at the heart of growing this economy to $30 trillion over the next, decade. And I think that we all know that getting people connected is the first step of creating an inclusive environment for them. We can then educate them. We can then provide some levels of health care. We can then hire them and actually have them work. And so I think just the basic connectivity and bringing them into the economy and providing services to them is the most important use case we can possibly have right now. And it's been really impressive. And from Cisco's perspective, we've obviously worked with the provider of those 5G services to help them build out their networks, the infrastructure, the backbones that have to be built to accommodate this traffic, and over time, real-time video applications, et cetera, will put a lot of load on the networks, and we're working closely with the customers here to actually make that happen.
So what is going to be India's contribution to Cisco's global revenues in the next 5 years, given the aspiration that you have? I know it's among your top 5 performing markets globally, but what is it going to mean in terms of contribution?
I don't see any reason why it couldn't get to 10% of our revenue over the next several years. It's the growth here is going to be astounding. The GDP growth alone right now is phenomenal. The size of the population, the technology commitment, the understanding of the power of technology at the leadership level in the country. I mean, you meet with the Prime Minister, and his ability to go deep in these technology areas is pretty impressive. And so I think that it's going to be a very significant contributor to our business over the next few years.
So the domestic opportunity as well as the export opportunity that you're hoping to cater via this manufacturing facility. So $1 billion in domestic and exports by when?
Well, that's just the first year. We would expect that. And then as we add more products to it over time, then that will increase, obviously.
So when do you actually start manufacturing?
We expect to have the first products rolling off in about 12 months.
In 12 months.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the global picture, Chuck, because what we are seeing at this point in time is a sort of meltdown as far as global tech is concerned. But the results, and of course you've got your numbers coming out on the 17th of May, so I know that this is a silent period and you're not going to be constrained to say very much. But has the outlook changed significantly from February when you did your last call? Because then you didn't talk about the fact that you were seeing clients dropping off or orders dropping off. You believe that the market was still looking fairly resilient.
I think the thing to understand right now is that technology's role in society and in business has evolved even in the last 5 to 7 years. And I think during the pandemic, every CEO, every C-suite executive, every head of state, every minister, they experienced technology in a way that they never had before. No one believed that we could keep the global economy moving and keep people productive when everyone went home. And so I think there's a new appreciation for the strategic power of technology. And I think that you combine that with all of these commitments to digitization in countries like India, the understanding from our customers about how they have to optimize their customer experience for their customers. There's investments there. The underlying change with all the cloud services and how everyone's fundamental architecture is changing. The cybersecurity landscape is expanding and is changing because of the distributed worlds that we're all managing. So it's while there may be slowdowns, technology is going to be a core part of spending. Most of my customers say it's the last thing I'm going to cut. Now, they may start prioritizing deeply within their budgets. As you and I were talking about earlier, we've heard some companies come out and say that they're seeing some impact from it. But I think in a macro sense over the long term, I think customers are going to continue to invest in technology because it's so important.
If you believe that your clients are not going to hold back or cut back on tech spending, what about you within the company? You undertook a restructuring exercise late last year, about $600 million. As part of that, it did involve some layoffs, etc. as well. Do you believe that you're done with that? Is the worst behind you, or do you believe that more will need to be done as well, given the changes that we are seeing in the environment?
Yeah. So first of all, I didn't say customers won't slow down at all. I think that what I'm saying is that technology will be one of the last things that they decide to slow down because it's so important to what they're all trying to accomplish. From our perspective, our reduction in the charge was not a cost-related issue. It wasn't about lowering our overall cost envelope. In fact, in the next fiscal year, we're going to spend more in OPEX than we did this year. But it was about getting the expenses in the right place quickly because we needed to de-invest in certain businesses and we needed different skill sets in other areas. And so that was what ours was all about. And the teams did a great job and actually did it in a very humane way to the extent we needed to. We ended up actually at the time with fewer actions than we actually thought we would. But it was not cost related. So.
But do you believe that you may need to do more, given the changes that we are seeing in the macro environment?
Well, I don't think that I don't think that we are seeing significant differences that would lead you to some sort of mass cost exercise. As I said, our expenses right now, we plan as of now for them to be higher next year. I think that every company is different. A lot of companies during COVID had massive increases in their top line, and they hired accordingly, and then they've realized that they had hired perhaps too quickly, and they've had to adjust to that. We did not do that. We stayed more steady through the whole time.
One of the impacts of COVID was, of course, the kind of supply chain disruptions that we saw, and that resulted in a significant order backlog that you had to deal with as well. Right. Where are things on that front, and is the worst past as far as supply chain issues are concerned?
Well, I think it certainly has improved a lot, and we'll talk more about that on our earnings call next week. But the last earnings call, we said we've seen significant improvement in lots of areas, and so I think the worst that we've seen is behind us. There certainly can be can be challenges going forward. As you know, most of us now are we're having to move from having designed our supply chains for just ultimate efficiency, and we're having to redesign them to create more resiliency going forward, and that's a lot of the work that the team's doing now.
Let's talk about WebEx as well, because that was one of the other aspects that saw a sort of big surge on account of what we went through the course of the pandemic. Now with things normalizing, people getting back to work from office, hybrid sort of becoming less and less of a thing, how do you see that playing itself out?
Well, hybrid work seems to be the dominant way that people are working these days. So the need to have this technology hasn't necessarily changed. What's changed is how the technology needs to work. Because when everyone's home, it was actually easier because everyone had the same little square on the screen and everybody was equal. Or when everybody's in the office, that's easier. But in this hybrid world, it's much different because meetings don't feel as inclusive when you have 7 people in a conference room and 2 people at home. And so creating technology as a part of WebEx, as an example, where even if people are in a conference room, you actually use AI and you zero in on their faces and you put them all in the same size box as the people that are working from home, creates a much more inclusive and effective meeting environment. And I think that, as well as all of our customers, are looking at outfitting conference rooms and creating these real hybrid work environments. So I think that we've seen an uptick in our cloud calling platforms. Contact center is a very big investment area for our customers right now. And so all of those combined are areas where we see our customers investing as part of this hybrid work model.
Time for us to head into a break, but when we return, we continue our conversation with the global CEO of Cisco, Chuck Robbins. Welcome back. You're watching Global Dialogue. We're in conversation with the global CEO of Cisco, Chuck Robbins, on their plans for India, their announcement of setting up a manufacturing facility here in the country for the very first time. I want to understand from you, Chuck, how as CEO you're reading the many changes that we are seeing shape economics and shape economic policy. The assumption was that through the course of the pandemic and what transpired post the pandemic, there would be a decoupling with China. Now, there is clearly no decoupling. There is a de-risking that seems to be taking place. You've got President Biden saying, look, move supply chains back to America. You've got India saying, make in India, for India and for the world. As a CEO, how do you read what's going on and how geopolitics is shaping economics and trade?
It's a very, very good question. And it's something that we spend a lot more time on today than we did 5 to 6, 7 years ago, obviously. And it really is a byproduct of there's a nationalist movement that's occurring in almost every country around the world. And COVID actually brought that out because I think countries realized dependencies that failed. And they didn't fail because necessarily there was malfeasance. They failed because of capacity in certain cases. So that's led countries to rethink their dependence and not becoming independent, but making sure that you have a little more control of things that are important. And then also data privacy, data sovereignty, and all those things are leading countries to, some countries want cloud services to be housed and data to be localized. In India, it's very important to the Prime Minister to build a manufacturing sector here. And with the number of people here and the size of the market, that actually works well because it actually makes good business sense for all of us. So I'd say that we just have to deal with all these dynamics. You can wake up and wish the world was different, but it's not. And it's just a complex puzzle that we get up every day and we spend our time figuring out what it means to our business and how to adapt to it, and that's just what we do. And
so how much time do you spend on scenario planning and risk planning, especially keeping in mind what's happening as far as politics is concerned?
We spend more time today on that clearly than we did 6, 7 years ago, and we've always done. We've always had enterprise risk management, as every company has. I think the difference is we've added geopolitical dynamics to that model over the last few years that we probably didn't have as much to think about 6, 7, 8 years ago.
So when political leaders talk about things like friend-shoring and near-shoring, how does a CEO like yourself respond to that?
Well, we have to think about our business, and we have to do what's right for our business, and it's not quite as simple sometimes as a soundbite, and supply chains are very complicated, and they've been built for over 2 decades the way they've been built, and you don't unwind them that quickly either. And it's a very complicated ecosystem relative to component suppliers and logistics and tax implications and labor. And so all of those things come into play. And so at the end of the day, we have to look at all of it. We look at all the legalities, all the tax issues, the logistics, the cost, where are our suppliers, where are our customers, where do we need regional hubs. And our teams have been doing this for years relative to dynamically sort of reprovisioning our supply chain based on risk and things of that nature. And this has just become one more risk factor that we just have to put into the model.
You know, let's move away from risks and talk about the opportunities. You talked about the 5G opportunity, which is looking exciting here in India. The world, of course, at this point in time, in raptures over what AI is potentially going to mean, and whether this is going to, require guardrails to be put in place right away, or let this sort of let's see how this plays itself out. What are you excited about in terms of emerging technologies and the bets that you're willing to make as well, keeping those new technologies in mind?
Well, clearly, I think that the recent emergence of these models for generative AI are going to create lots of opportunities. And any new technology typically comes with a lot of benefits, and there are risks associated with them. I think the difference is the pace at which this one's moving, and the rapid engagement of, would you have ever believed that the normal person who's not involved in the tech industry would actually be able to say Chat GPT? I mean, just to know what that is.
Are you on Chat GPT?
Am I on it?
Yeah.
we have people that use it for sure. I've certainly tested it and tried it, and there's other tools that have come out as well. I personally think we do need guardrails pretty quickly, just so we can understand it a little more. So inside of our company, we've actually done that. We've put guardrails up with our teams, and some of them want to go really fast. And I said, we need to understand this. We need to make sure we have the processes in place. We need to make sure we don't have any risk of exposing customer data to these these platforms. We have to make sure we have our intellectual property protected. I mean, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and already have, that you've read about in the press. And so what I've told our team is we're going to slow down a little bit, learn, test, so that we can go faster when it's time to go faster. And we already thought about a lot of use cases. There's very common use cases that everybody's thinking about. But it'll be a powerful technology as we go forward, for sure.
Well, speaking about opportunities, you've done a bunch of acquisitions, I think 3 or 4 already. Is that going to be something that you're considering here, specifically from an India standpoint as well? Do you have the appetite for M&A here?
Would love to. Anytime we have an R&D base like we have here, it's very easy, and it makes perfect sense for us to acquire companies. And I think we talked to the Prime Minister and some of the other government officials about how do we accelerate the startup community. It's vibrant, but we think it can even be more vibrant here. And anytime we can acquire near an existing R&D center, it just makes it easier for us. And I think that we know India, we know how it works, we have a huge employee base here, and it's just natural.
You said that you know India, you worked here, you've been a long-term committed investor in India. What do you believe have been the most significant changes that are now reshaping your strategy for India?
Well, I tell you, just coming here after being gone for 4 years, you can see the shift in the physical infrastructure. You can see the improvements in physical infrastructure, and that's going to continue. I can only imagine if I'm gone for a year and come back. You can see the digital infrastructure that's been created, the commitment from government, the vision that the Prime Minister has for India, and what he's proven relative to India's ability to execute against that vision. I wouldn't bet against them at all. I think it's incredible. And when you see the pace at which 5G is rolled out, the pace at which the digital identity is rolled out, the payment platforms, I mean, all of these things just show that when when you decide to do something, you can do it quickly and at scale. And I think that what's been proven here in the last 3 or 4 years is that the next 10 to 15 are going to be at the same breakneck pace, which gives us great confidence investing here.
Back to the risks now, since we addressed the opportunities specifically here in India. As far as the U.S. is concerned, it looks like there is going to be some sort of a tapering now as far as rates are concerned, but we don't know. And 5% is the new normal today. What does that mean for businesses? You've got the next big imminent threat, which is the debt ceiling, but that hopefully will be resolved.
Hopefully.
How do you read what's going on in the U.S. and the impact on your business specifically?
Isn't it funny that you say 5% is the new normal? I mean, we've been at 0% so long that a whole generation thinks that's normal. And I think the economy grew for a long time with 5, 6, 7% interest rates, and I think that's more the norm. It's what the norm used to be anyway. I think for us, obviously it increases cost of capital for companies that need capital. It increases, in our particular situation, if we're going to do M&A and we need debt to go do it, which for bigger stuff we would, small stuff we don't. It just increases cost of capital and makes the business model, you have to build that expense into it. But I think it's healthy for the economy over time. I think obviously it's created a bit of a shock in the near term, but I think long term, I think it's healthy for rates to be at a reasonable rate and not where they've been.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait to see if the Fed does decide that this is it for now or hike further. But let me end then by asking you, Chuck, the top 5 markets at this point in time, you've given us a very comprehensive sense of why you're bullish on India and why you believe that India is going to be one of your top performing markets. But what about the others at this point in time? What excites you about the rest of the pack?
Well, I think when you look around at what's going on with all of our customers right now, they're all re-architecting their underlying infrastructure to deal with their cloud strategy, to deal with hybrid work, to deal with distributed applications, to deal with distributed data. And the constant across all of that happens to be the network and the secure network. And so for us, anywhere where there's a commitment to digital expansion, then that's good for us. And when you look at that combined with the real need to re-architect and to protect against the cyber threats that are out there, and when you look at sustainability, we didn't really talk about sustainability today, but at the heart of sustainability around the world is connectivity and technology, because we connect things, we can make them more efficient, we can make them smarter, and we can actually lower the carbon footprint. So I look at it more across the opportunities across the world and less so about just a specific geography, although certain geographies like India will be growing much faster. So
2023 looking better than 2022, or do you believe that the risks outweigh the opportunities, at least in the near term?
Probably too early to tell.
Chuck, it's always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us here on the Global Dialogue in India, and we look forward to having you back sooner.
It's great to be here, and I look forward to being back sooner.
Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of the Global Dialogue. From all of us here on the team, goodbye, and many thanks for watching.